Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Revolution Evolution. I am your host, Gregory, with Revolution Evolution. I'm joined by my partner, D, with Around the World with Brandy and D tonight. And tonight we're going to touch base on more on the looming climate emergency, along with things that we could do to address the looming climate emergency that is looming. And it brings me to the first article of tonight, where we are going to discuss Extinction Rebellion paints government office black over UK's first deep coal mine in 30 years. And they quoted here opening a coal mine in a region that is already disproportionately affected by the climate crisis with floods, increasing and unprecedented rainfall is complete madness, said one activist. Climate activists with Extinction Rebellion on Wednesday gathered in canary costumes and doused a UK government building with black paint to protest a recent approval of the country's first new deep coal mine in 3 decades. As police hurried to block access to the doors, protesters lit smoke bombs, according to The Guardian, which noted that the Tory government is pressing ahead with moves to crack down on disruptive protest by giving law enforcement new powers. Michael Gove, the Conservative Secretary of State at the Department of Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, last month green-lighted the mine in the Whitehaven, Cumbria. The coal will be extracted for steel making versus energy, and 85% of it is expected to be exported to mainland Europe. Where is the government's ambition to act on this climate and ecological emergency? How dare they think of opening a coal mine now? Opening a coal mine today means that the UK can't argue that China or India should decrease their coal emissions, declared Dorothy Hackman, a 70-year-old grandmother from Camden, in a statement from Extinction Rebellion. Whitehaven isn't even wanted by the British steelworks. It's going to be exported. There is no argument for domestic production. Gove's decision has been widely criticized by campaigners, scientists, and some politicians due to the estimated planet heating emission from mining and the coal. Climate groups have launched 2 legal challenges to the project. 2022 saw record global greenhouse gas emissions and record global temperatures, said Sarah Hart, a mother from Farnborough and one of the 2 XR protesters who laid down in front of the department office on Wednesday with one arm in lock on tube featuring the message "End Coal." Where's the government's ambition to act on this climate and ecological emergency? How dare they think of opening a coal mine now? She continued, blasting Gove's claims about the mine and demanding an end to all new fossil fuel projects. And this here's the members of the Extinction Rebellion protest right here at the UK Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities in London on the 18th. Wednesday's demonstration was a part of Extinction Rebellion's Cut the Ties action, which launched in November at 13 sites across London and led to 17 arrests, according to the group. Hart highlighted at the time behind the incomprehensible government decisions to double down on fossil fuel development, sign off on new oil exploration licenses, and allow big energy companies to rake in record profits lies a network of companies and organizations that are profiting off of this destructive path. While the rest of us worry about the cost of turning the heating on, our government is prioritizing the profits of the very companies that are jeopardizing our climate and environment, Hart argued. Adding that XR is sending the message that it's time to cut ties with fossil fuels or lose social licenses to operate in the UK. The new action comes after Extinction Rebellion's UK arm announced at the beginning of the year that it will no longer use public disruption as a primary tactic, explaining that this year we prioritize attendance over arrest and relationships over roadblocks as we stand together and become impossible to ignore. As part of that claim, XR is planning a nonviolent mass action for April 21st because 100,000 is the number of signatories on a petition that gets a question raised in Parliament. The group hopes to bring together at least many people to London to demand a fair society and a citizen-led end to the fossil fuel era. And there's a tweet right here from also Extinction Rebellion for those of you who want information on this and what to follow up on. You can go and follow them at X Rebellion UK as well. So this is a very good showing of solidarity for environmental justice, which should be done. They do not need to be opening up new coal or doing anything in regards to fossil fuels because it jeopardizes the life of Mother Earth as we know it. And by doing that, you emit more carbon into the atmosphere, which also erodes the already fractured ozone layer. And it's going to cause even more problems than it's worth. It truly is going to cause a lot more problems than it's really worth. Like, it's not worth jeopardizing the planet or harming valuable ecosystems and ruining local environments. It's really not even worth it, in my opinion. And this only shows that governments only care about who can profit the most. And that's why we need a global dump the corruption revolution to dump these people out of office to save our planet from the sheer destruction and from the pending climate crisis that's already at our front door.
Now, what brought this on, them looking for other sources of heat in the coal mines and stuff, is the whole issue with them getting involved, listening to the USA and standing with the USA and going after Russia.
That's all it really is.
Yeah, because that was their source of energy, their heat. So now you went on a destructive path, a wrong path. Now, hey, you put yourself in this terrible position. You bit the hand that feeds you or heats your homes, and that was Russia.
They just had to start this whole war for nothing.
Exactly. Terrible.
It's very terrible, and we're going to punish the planet for no apparent reason.
Right, and all these people are going to be freezing during the winter because
and they're probably already freezing as it is. Like, they could be doing the full-scale industrialization of hemp to offset all of this. And The hemp would also sequester vast amounts of carbon from Earth's atmosphere, and they can be burning clean burning hemp fuels in their homes that have have no environmental impact at all. Hemp really is the future.
Yes, it is. But like you said, they're not. They burned the bridges with Russia, so now they're looking for where they could profit. They could profit with this coal, not thinking about the long term harm.
They didn't even think about that before they just wanted to start this pointless war with Russia. And what they don't realize is this war that's being fought in Ukraine is also committing an injustice to the planet.
Oh yeah, they don't think that far.
No, they don't.
I really think they weren't thinking at all, getting involved with Russia, and they were just following the USA.
Exactly. Like they're our lapdogs.
Exactly.
Marjan van der Geer of Extinction Rebellion UK said on Wednesday that the group wants a citizen led transition away from fossil fuels via a citizens' assembly on climate and ecological justice. Providing unstable jobs in the coal sector during a climate crisis in a region where there are limited economic opportunities is not justice, Van der Geer stressed. Opening a coal mine in a region that is already disproportionately affected by the climate crisis with floods increasing and unprecedented rainfall is complete madness. The BBC points out that West Cumbria Mining, the firm behind the project, promises to create 500 direct jobs and 1,500 in the wider community, but critics question those figures. Due to rising sea levels, swaths of Cumbria could be underwater by 2040, according to an analysis published last year by Climate Central, which noticed our maps are not based on physical storm and flood simulations and do not take into account factors such as erosion, future changes in the frequency or intensity of storms, inland flooding, or contributions from rainfall or rivers. Let's look at this right here. And this is the areas of Cumbria that could be underwater. Get off my screen there. That could be underwater by 2040. And it's just crazy. You see that? That's what sea level rise would do in this already disproportionate region there. And as you see on this map, all of the red, all of this like dark red, orange, red that you see on this map, and this is from Climate Central, those are the new areas that could be underwater by 2040 if the climate crisis is not addressed right now. And this is very, very troublesome, if you ask me. And it's going to be like this all around the world. You're going to see areas like this where more land is consumed by sea level rise because we have governments that are ignoring all of the science right here behind climate change because they are too beholden to the fossil fuel industry, the military industrial complex, petrochemicals, anything that harms the environment. And it's just very troublesome to see a map like this where you see these sections of land that will be underwater. Like, who's to say this whole peninsula right here by the year 2060, 2070 isn't completely underwater or fully submerged.
Well, the wealthy don't care because they'll be living somewhere else.
Yeah. Like, it's crazy to look at these maps like this and see all of the levels of and how the sea levels are going to rise. And I'm going to continue doing shows like this to highlight the climate emergency and the
Because I think people don't get it. There's a lot of people that just don't get it.
Well, the reason why they don't get it is it all comes down to the education system. And they are also buying into the mainstream media narratives as well, that climate change is some sort of made up hoax, when in reality we're seeing island nations being swallowed by the ocean. And there's an
Yes, we're
article
witnessing
right
it.
here also on this, and it's from the BBC, and I think they may be a mainstream news source in the UK, but it says Cumbria coal mine, will it threaten the UK's climate targets? And they say, does the UK need a coal mine? The coal from the mine will not generate electricity, but make steel. Most steel production involves heating coal to high temperatures and combining it with iron. It takes about 770 kilograms of coal to make 1 ton of steel, and the UK produces 7.4 million tons of steel per year. UK steelmakers are currently getting nearly half their coal from Russia. But after the country's invasion of Ukraine, the UK pledged to stop using Russian resources. However, the government's advisory climate change committee points out that 85% of coal produced in Whitehaven is likely to be exported, which may limit its benefit to the UK. Very much so like what the Keystone Pipeline here in the US would have done. Like, none of the oil from the Keystone Pipeline would have been refined or used in the US. It would have been exported to other countries for
Right.
their use. And they were just going to use the US as their pipeline to send it off and out into another country, and we wouldn't have even used it. So what's the point of having that? And this article right here from the BBC also says, why is the mine controversial? The project was initially approved by Cumbria County Council in October of 2020. West Cumbria Mining, the firm behind the project, promised to create 500 direct jobs and 1,500 in the wider community. Critics question those figures, but more than 40 conservative MPs backed the project. So this wouldn't have created many jobs at all. This really wouldn't have. However, in February of 2021, progress was suspended after the UK's CCC warned the government that steelmaking shouldn't use coal after 2035 if the UK wants to meet its climate targets. The council has granted permission to dig until 2049. So this is contradicting even their climate goals as well, of what the council has granted permission for. The planning inspectorate reviewed the original decision and sent a report to Community Secretary Michael Gove, who has approved the project. So they're contradicting their own climate goals here. It shouldn't even happen. So for them to say that they're wanting to meet certain climate goals by 2035, but grant a permission to dig this coal mine until nearly 2050,
It's insane.
it's insanity. And
Different parts of the government.
And as Devora right here states, it seems they need to focus on their wind and water power. And I agree with Devora 100% right there.
Yeah, it seems to me that they need to focus on surviving.
They need to really focus on that altogether. Like, we could be doing the full industrialization of hemp fuels by, I think if we started the full industrialization of hemp, we can even meet climate targets before even any goals are reached by any year. Like, I think we could take over the next 5 years, in my opinion, and after transitioning over to hemp from fossil fuels, it would be a very good aspect for environmental justice, because you got to think of how many tons of carbon would be no longer emitted into the atmosphere, which hemp will filter out. Like, the hemp will serve as a carbon filter.
Won't it serve as a carbon sink? It'll draw the carbon out of the air.
Oh yeah, it will sequester vast amounts of carbon out of the atmosphere
and bring it into the soil.
7 even, yes. Hemp crops will also detoxify the soil. Like, if they took right now over where Chernobyl was impacted, like in that vicinity, if they started industrialization of hemp right there around Chernobyl, it will detoxify the soil to a rate where the soil could easily be used again, and there wouldn't be so much radiation in the soil. Like, I think they need to be taking around these I think they could be taking around these nuclear power sites and planting hemp there to sequester radiation coming from that. But yeah, more toward the end of the show, I'll also share an article on hemp as well for those wondering, because we need to be more educated on hemp and what many uses could do, and how they would have a very, very amazing impact on the environment.
Yes, hemp has been spoken about for years.
And from what I understand, until in 1914, the U.S. dollar was printed on hemp paper.
Yes, I understand that too.
And also the Declaration of Independence was printed on hemp paper. Like, hemp has played a very vital role even in U.S. history. And this also brings me to another article, which takes us around the world to South America. We're going to go to South America in this one. And this also from Common Dreams. Rainforest carbon offset used by major corporations are largely worthless, according to analysis. Companies are making false claims and then they are convincing customers that they can fly guilt free or buy carbon neutral products when they aren't in any way carbon neutral, one expert lamented. Over 90% of the rainforest carbon offsets sold by the nonprofit organization that sets the world's leading sustainability standard are largely worthless and could make global heating worse. An investigation published Monday by 3 media outlets confirmed. For 9 months, The Guardian, DZ, and source material analyzed scientific studies of Vera, the world's leading carbon standard, in a voluntary global offset market worth $2 billion annually and growing. Vera's customers include major multinational corporations, and the analysis finding costs doubt over the carbon offsets the companies buy in over or order to label their products as carbon neutral or assure customers that they consume their products or services without worsening the climate emergency. The implications of this analysis are huge, said Barbara Haya, head of the Carbon Trading Project at the University of California, Berkeley. Companies are making false claims and then they are convincing customers that they can fly guilt free or buy carbon neutral products when they are anyway carbon neutral. And in this tweet from Patrick Greenfield, and it says new forest carbon offsets approved by the world's leading provider and used by Disney, Shell, Gucci, and other largely worthless and could make global heating worse, a new investigation finds. And that's also in that Guardian article right there as well, where it says revealed more than 90, and it goes over what this article also states as well. According to The Guardian, key findings of the analysis include only a handful of Vera's rainforest projects showed evidence of deforestation reductions, according to 2 studies, with further analysis indicating that 94% of the credits had no benefit to the climate. Number 2, the threat to forests have been overstated by about 400% on average for Vera projects, according to analysis of a 2022 University of Cambridge study. Gucci, Salesforce, BHP, Shell, EasyJet, Leon, and the band Pearl Jam were among dozens of companies and organizations that have bought rainforest offsets approved by Vera for environmental claims, and human rights issues are also a serious concern in at least one of the offsetting projects, which involved home destructions and forced evictions in Peru. I have worked as an auditor on these projects in the Brazilian Amazon. When I started the analysis, I wanted to know if we could trust these predictions about deforestation. Thales West, a lead author on the studies, told The Guardian, the evidence from the analysis suggests we cannot. I want this system to work to protect rainforests. For that to happen, we need to acknowledge the scale of problems with the current system. Co-author Aaron Seals said, I'd like to find that conserving forests, which conserves biodiversity and conserves local ecosystems services. Also has a real effective impact on reducing climate change. If it doesn't, it's scary because it's a little bit less hope for reducing climate change. Vera responded to the outlet's analysis by saying the paper's claims are based on methods that do not account for project specific factors that cause deforestation, which we already know is a lie from what I'm reading. As a result, these studies massively miscalculate the impact of REDD Plus projects, the organization added, referring to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or COP framework, to guide activities in the forest sector that reduce emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. And I'm going to show this tweet right here. Vera is responding to our investigations about their carbon credits. Technically, they want you to believe that the orange line in this chart are credible, conservative baselines of what would have happened without their forest protection projects. So you're seeing right here that there really is a greater impact to climate change as well, from what I can understand right here. And that's why I wanted to highlight that. And they also say in this other tweet, the blue lines show what happened in similar areas at the same time. Everybody is, of course, entitled to their own opinion. The chart is from Thales West study about carbon offset projects in Brazil, which have been used for further analysis as well. And I think these are really good things to talk about right here. And this right here is overstated carbon emission reductions. And I think this is a really good article to read up on as well. And it just seems that these organizations are also telling a lie as well regarding this. So they aren't as environmentally friendly as they are making themselves out to be. Which is just insane. But yeah, I'm actually in agreement with Seven Even. He's feeling that they're feeling how such an important range of topics are being covered in the group. Yeah. Like this right here, we do need to cover all of these topics, from the new coal projects going forward to the rainforests as well, because these play vital and key roles on how our environment sustains itself.
We also have to relate it all to dump the corruption.
Exactly. And in regards to dump the corruption, we've got to make the money that these people are taking from fossil fuels. We got to make these people that take money from fossil fuel companies
stop taking
very toxic.
Very toxic to the candidates, because that money is toxic to us.
And as Cora Emanuel right here highlights, coal and energy companies have been caught red-handed suppressing their own findings that they drastically contribute to climate change. And there has been studies even back in the 60s and 70s, which this was prior to the formation of the Environmental Protection Agency, that fossil fuels are a driving factor to climate change. And you could see even in the photos in a lot of these reports of all the smog and emissions around the bigger cities, which was being emitted before the formation of the EPA and any other environmental protection agencies around the world.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing pictures of New York City before and after. Amazing.
Hang on, I'm gonna look up these photos right here, and like there are like literally before and after photos. And I found this one right here to be very interesting. To and this is from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency as well. And this goes along with what we're discussing tonight. But yeah. Let me put a light bulb in my bedroom. Okay.
Sometimes that cracks covered.
Huh?
Some of us are used to hearing about what's going on and follow up, but then there's other people that really don't get to hear about latest and especially what's going on overseas and all that. So it's nice that he's bringing up
Yeah.
the topic and talking about it from various places. But I remember reading
Yeah.
that with.
This
Oh, that's Greg. Okay.
right here, what I was showing before. This photo is from 1973 and shows a hazy New York City skyline before the George Washington Bridge. And this shows on the photo on the left the air quality of New York City before the formation of the environmental protect. Hang on, is it not showing?
No, it's not showing yet.
Okay, but yeah, this here shows what we were just discussing. The photo on the left is before the formation of the EPA, and the photo on the right is after the formation of the EPA, where they really cleaned up the air and got rid of a lot of unnecessary smog in the atmosphere right there, which you could still see make out some smog off to the distance in some areas right there, but it was worse before 1973. And that's just 6 years from 1971 to 1977. And it's just amazing what Clean Air Acts will do for the environment. And I've even seen even things that were pre-pandemic and during while we was on COVID lockdowns. And this goes along with what Sandy Degg says. Even during the pandemic, when everyone was in lockdown, the air quality was better because the people were not driving as much. The smog level was down in LA. You can actually see in the city. And what Seven Even right here also says, he read that today in Germany has had to go back to coal and nuclear to survive the winter reluctantly. And I thought they were very green energy sustained. We thought that too, but this war in Ukraine has pushed them to new lengths to where they aren't even going to be able to make climate goals because of the unwarranted war. And many areas in Europe are being punished by the war in Ukraine, which shouldn't be happening. Look at how much carbon is being emitted in Ukraine.
That's all true, but also we have to remember that the sanctions have been devastating for the Europeans. They've backfired. They need that oil from Russia to supplement their other energy sources. And now they either cannot get that oil, or they have to pay a lot more for it. So that's what we're seeing there.
Yeah, also those what you were just talking about with the sanctions also didn't make matters worse. And this also and there's also something going on with another century, and there's also watchdogs that are warning, and this also brings me to my next article as well, where watchdogs are warning House GOP bill would lock in another century of oil and gas. Oh, Lord, just what we need, another century of oil and gas, which contributes to even sea level rises. Instead of holding accountable big oil CEOs for causing last year's record-setting gas prices, the new majority is hell-bent on making political statements as American families suffer.
Climate Jake Johnson from Common Dreams.
Oh, he's a really good writer.
Yeah.
Climate watchdogs Monday warned that a bill House Republicans are expected to vote on this week is a thinly veiled effort to open more public lands and waters to planet-wrecking oil and gas drilling. The Strategic Production Response Act, led by now House Energy and Commerce Committee Chair Rep. Kathy McMorris Rogers, Republican of Washington, aims to curtail presidential authority to release oil from the U.S. Strategic Reserve, something President Joe Biden did on a major scale last year in an attempt to curb gas prices. But Joshua Axelrod, a senior advocate at the National Resources Defense Council, who focuses on public lands, noted in a blog post Monday that despite its title, the bill neither responds to any existing problem nor advances any coherent or achievable energy policy. Under the guise of limiting the use of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, or the SPR, the Strategic Production Response Act appears, in fact, to be focused on establishing a federal oil and gas leasing mandate that eclipses all past efforts to hand over public lands and offshore areas to oil and gas companies, Axelrod wrote. How? Under the proposed language, no non-emergency drawdown of the SPR can take place without the development of a plan from the Secretary of Energy and other relevant agency heads to lease for oil and gas production on lands and waters by the same percentage as the planned SPR drawdowns, up to 10%. Put more clearly, if 1% of the SPR is to be drawn down, the plan to lease 1% of available public lands or offshore areas must first be developed, Axelrod added, cautioning that if passed, the measure would lock in another century of oil and gas. So this is already going to be disastrous on the environment. It's really going to be very disastrous. I can already tell. Because in a time where we need to be reducing or either cutting dependency on fossil fuels, they're wanting to continue the use of this fuel that's wreaking teetotal havoc on Mother Earth and our planet.
Right. And it's all about the donors, of course.
Exactly. And that's why we need to dump the corruption for environmental justice. In a letter to the House Energy and Commerce Committee last week, Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm expressed strong opposition to Rogers' bill, arguing it would cause more oil supply shortages in times of crisis and higher fuel prices for Americans. Jacob Schreiber, the director of energy and environment at the progressive watchdog group Accountable US, echoed that warning in a statement Monday. McCarthy and his MAGA majority are making it clear right out of the gate they'd rather play politics than provide much needed relief to American consumers, said Schreiber.
Yeah, of course.
This bill hamstrings the executive branch, taking away a critical tool in combating rampant price gouging at the pump, while making it easier to give our public lands away to the very companies responsible for artificially high fuel prices. Instead of holding accountable the big oil CEOs for causing last year's record-setting gas prices, the new majority is hell-bent on making political statements as American families suffer. Accountable US has also released an analysis countering Republican claims that have been used to justify Strategic Production Response Act. And this right here in this tweet, y'all can go follow this group right here over on Twitter. It's at accountable_US. And they are saying in the tweet, just in, the new House is taking up legislation that would prevent the president from combating industry price gouging and make it easier for big oil to gain control of public lands. The MAGA majority would rather, yeah, that's very true. And they're also, it's not only are they playing politics that would provide relief to American families, this is playing politics that would kill our planet.
I know. It's really unforgivable.
It's really unforgivable, especially in a time when we're facing a potential climate emergency, which could already be at our front door and we don't even know it. We really don't know it. And that's the scary part. That we could be facing a climate emergency right now and they're not even telling us about it.
Well, there are plenty of articles that suggest
that we are
in a climate emergency right now, and that we have to move much, much faster to manage that climate emergency. Actually, my own assumption is that we have to really severely change things over the next 2-3 years, or you can stick a fork in us because we'll be done.
Yeah, we've got to do something fast. And we don't have time to waste.
I know, and especially us average folks, because the elites already got a plan for themselves.
Yeah, that plan's not going to work. They're dreaming. They're blowing smoke because they want to keep on making the money. And they just don't want to admit that the situation is going to be so bad that they won't escape. What can they do to protect themselves?
Absolutely nothing. The Biden Interior Department has itself come under fire from environmentalists for auctioning off huge swaths of public lands and waters for oil and gas extractions, despite the president's campaign vow to put an end to such drilling. Recent research shows that drilling on public lands and waters has been responsible for roughly a quarter of all U.S. greenhouse gas pollution since 2005. In 2021, the Biden administration approved more onshore oil and gas drilling permits per month than the Trump administration did in the first 3 years in power. Nonetheless, Republicans awash in big oil campaign cash have repeatedly accused the Biden administration of being insufficiently aggressive when it comes to turning federal lands and waters over to the profit-soaked fuel industry. Rogers, who received $218,367 from individuals and PACs associated with the oil and gas industry during the last election cycle. So that's an automatic disqualifier in the litmus test right there for dump the corruption.
It sure
Dump
is.
Rogers and we get climate justice. Said in a floor speech earlier this month, it's time to cut the red tape and expand energy production here at home. Well, if you really want to expand energy production, why don't you authorize a bill for the full industrialization of hemp nationwide? Then we would really be energy independent. We can have energy production in hemp. That's the solution. In the recent days, branches of the Koch-funded group Americans for Prosperity have been boosting Rogers' legislation on Twitter, urging the GOP-controlled House to pass it. With Democrats narrowly controlling the Senate, the bill, one of several big oil-friendly measures Republicans are planning to advance in the coming months, is unlikely to make it to Biden's desk. Axelrod of NRDC argued, it is not hyperbole to conclude that Rogers' legislation proposes a leasing plan in a massive in scale. It would eclipse all historic precedent and pave the way for federal oil and gas leasing well into the next century, which we really do not need. We don't need any more of that. The agencies implicated by this proposal have jurisdiction over 3.1 billion acres of onshore and offshore areas, suggesting that the 10% limit on acreage could be leased translates into 314 million acres. That's more than 8 times as many acres under lease, Axelrod wrote. This attempted public lands and waters giveaway comes as we're inundated daily with news of the escalating effects of the climate crisis on the U.S., he added. The incoming House majority appears to view those hardships and the enormous cost they impose on the U.S. economy as mere inconveniences to their laser-focused drive to prop up oil and gas industry that not only recorded record-breaking profits in 2022, but also is about to achieve record-breaking domestic production. So this is scary right here.
There's so much scary stuff going on. And when you get right down to it, it's the same people pushing the scaring stuff. It's the same people who are bought by various industries that are going to be doing the scaring stuff. And it all goes back, if we want to do anything about it, to dumping the corruption.
Exactly. And we have to dump the corruption if we're going to have any environmental justice. Like, we don't need any more oil and gas leases. We don't need any more wars, especially the Ukrainian war, where carbon emittance is off the charts in Ukraine right now and in that region.
Right, and we got to get rid of the neoliberal healthcare system.
Exactly.
And get ourselves a Medicare for all system or a national health service, not motivated by profit, but one which is free, which is free at the point of service.
And even Marianne Williamson hinted around that with how bad the climate crisis really is, it's going to make folks even sicker. And without a universal healthcare system, people are only going to get sicker because of the climate crisis. And something else to put into retrospect in that aspect there, if we don't take the climate crisis more seriously, we're going to have even worse pandemics than COVID-19. Like, you got to think about all of the stuff now that the permafrost has been thawing out over the global heating, and all the new all those prehistoric viruses are being emitted into the atmosphere at alarming rates.
Yes, that's very alarming. And then we also have to be concerned because the things that we need to do for the public health care system in order to fight the pandemics once they occur, we are not doing. We are not responding fiscally to the pandemic threat.
And this also brings me to a fourth article I have up, and this is what I'll read a little bit over, and this is about Davos and what Greta Thunberg has said. And she warns that Davos elite will throw humanity under the bus for profit. As long as they can get away with it, they will continue to invest in fossil fuels. The Swedish climate activist said, "We need to build and create a critical mass of people who demand change, who demand justice."
And that's what we're trying to do with Dump the Corruption.
Exactly. Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg took aim at those profiting off of the climate emergency Thursday on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum's summit in Davos. The Fridays for Future leader has previously attracted global attention for delivering impassioned speech at earlier summits, urging the Davos elite to act as if you loved your children above all else, and calling policymakers to stop basing your pledges on the cheating tactics that got us into this mess in the first place, and to start implementing annual binding carbon budgets. Early into a panel discussion Thursday with fellow climate activists and an international energy expert, Thunberg said, "We are right now in Davos, where basically the people are who are mostly fueling the destruction of the planet, the people who are at the very core of the climate crisis, the people who are investing in fossil fuels. Somehow, these are the people that we seem to rely on solving our problems, when they have proven time and time again they are not prioritizing that. The changes that we and there's a quote right here: the changes that we need are not likely to come from the inside. Rather, I believe they will come from the bottom up, which is what Dump the Corruption is about. It's a bottom up movement. They're prioritizing self-greed, corporate greed, and short-term economic profits above people and above planet, she charged. We seem to be listening to them rather than the people who are actually affected by the climate crisis, the people who are living on the front lines. And that kind of tells us the situation of how absurd this is. The people who we really should be listening to are not here. She said that of the yearly meeting that brings people from around the world to the Swiss resort town. Instead, we are bombarded with messages from people who are basically the people who are causing the crisis. Which she is very much spot on true here in this article, where the very people who are directly responsible for the climate emergency are the ones at the forefront.
Right, because they're just looking at their profits. It's about them. Them first.
It's not only their profits that they're looking after, it's also their investment portfolios that they have in oil and gas industries.
Exactly. It's them.
And we need to be moving away from fossil fuels. I'm even at the point where I don't see electric vehicles being feasible, because you're just like coal mining. You have to you're committing even more acts of global deforestation to strip mine vast sections of land to extract the lithium needed for the batteries for the electric vehicles. And people are also not taking into consideration that the batteries themselves could also leak.
That's true, but are there alternatives to lithium?
Well, I have seen articles on hemp batteries as well versus lithium, and they are in this one right here, this little excerpt I'm about to read off. Hemp batteries last 8 times longer than lithium, outperforming graphene for the 100th of the cost. Replacing lithium batteries with hemp would make electric cars and other gadgets way more sustainable. So hemp has a use for, they could create batteries out of hemp.
Yes.
As well. So there are several thousands of uses for hemp, from oil, from fuel, batteries. Like, why are they wanting to commit global deforestation and harm the environment even more than what hemp could do, that can revitalize the soil and have a better impact environmentally? Like, people need to understand that there are great environmental consequences if we don't go to hemp. And I think that's why I'm so against and skeptical of electric vehicles, because the batteries are made from the lithium.
All right, but that's not a reason to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
That's true too, but we could be making even the batteries from hemp.
Yes, we could. And what I'm basically saying is that there's no problem with electric cars as long as hemp batteries are in them.
Mm-hmm.
So when people start to, talk about electric cars, that's what we should then be saying.
And I just found this.
And if they continue to use the lithium batteries, then that's not going to work for us.
No, the lithium is even worse than what's being accounted for. And I have an article right here on hemp as well. And this is from researchers right here. And this article is from EcoWatch. Researchers make batteries from hemp. Researchers at BIMP Research Corp have developed a lithium sulfur battery that is more cost effective, has a higher performance, and is more recyclable than lithium ion batteries thanks to a helpful material, hemp. And this company uses a carbonized hemp rather than heavy metals like cobalt or nickel, making batteries that are lightweight and more durable. So they have figured out a way to make batteries out of hemp right here.
Yeah, but they still are using lithium, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think they should figure out a way to make batteries out of 100% hemp. And I also have a really good article right here on the endless benefits of hemp. And I love hemp. I love hemp. Hemp is awesome. And this is the endless benefits on hemp. Hemp is one of the most versatile plants and has a wide range of uses and has been recognized for centuries for providing fiber and food to medicinal and industrial uses. Hemp has many benefits that make it an attractive natural resource. What is hemp? Hemp is a versatile plant that can be used for many purposes. It can be cultivated on a global it has been cultivated on a global scale for thousands of years. In ancient China, hemp was primarily used to make clothing, rope, and paper. Today, hemp is used from everything from clothing to food to medicine. It is a very versatile and renewable crop that is able to be grown with little water and no pesticides. Hemp plants can be harvested in a variety of ways, including mechanical harvesting. They can be separated from their cores and fibers using a hammer and screen, or they can be crushed with a brush roller. Traditionally, the stalks of hemp were water retted. Often, they would be beaten by hand to separate the fibers. Hemp is also a good source of protein and is rich in magnesium and zinc. You can add it to your smoothie, oatmeals, and salads. The seeds of hemp are a great source of omega-3 fatty acids. Hemp is the fastest growing plant on earth. A single acre of hemp could produce more fiber than an acre of cotton. Hemp has also been an important part of the American Revolution. Thomas Jefferson penned the first draft of the Declaration of Independence on hemp paper. George Washington grew hemp on a large scale. He was obsessed with increasing the crop and saving the seeds for next year's harvest. See, I told you there was historical significance and that the Declaration of Independence was printed on hemp paper.
Yes, you did.
Hey, drink something.
Okay, I think we're about, at least for me, I think I'm about at an end.
Yeah.
I was just looking at hemp cars. They said I was reading an article. What happened to Henry Ford's hemp car? You should open that up.
Well, what they did there was he had a car fully made of hemp. The body and everything was made of hemp, and the U.S. government ordered him to destroy it because it competed with the fossil fuel companies.
Right, so there is the possibility of having a hemp car.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading something about Canada was talking about the hemp automobile.
And 7, even to answer your question, can it be used for animal feed? Yes, most definitely it can be used as animal feed. And the way they harvest it mechanically is they have a header that goes on a combine. It has two levels of it. You have the top level header right here that heart that gets the seed and puts it in the grain tank of the combine harvester. And the second header is what they use to get the fiber. So farmers could get money from the hemp seed and the hemp fiber to make more money and revenue for farmers. So it is a dual cash crop for farmers. We just need a Congress elected to legalize the industrialization of hemp.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to say good night.
And I'm going to say good night as well to everybody as well. And thank everybody for coming out.
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to do a show here Friday evening on hemp. And thank you for joining 7 Evan. It was really good to have you. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, comment, and follow everyone. And hit that notification bell so you don't miss out. And also subscribe to my partners, D with Around the World at Brandy and D, and Joe Firestone of Joe Firestone Empowering Democracy. And have a great night, everyone. And
good night, everybody. Good night, Kay. Good night, Sandy.
Good night, Cora.
Good night, Cora, everyone.
7.